You have a vlog? That's really cool.
All right, here we are, IT Coach for Business Leaders, episode 1, very first video cast.
All right.
So we just recorded an intro video that I'll be posting on the top of your blog page, your video cast page. But for people who may be viewing this video who didn't watch the intro video, I'd just like to do a quick introduction. So
Sure.
I'm the marketing director, obviously, here at InfoSystems, and you are?
My name is Aaron Swann. I serve as a virtual CIO here at InfoSystems.
And hopefully we'll have some snazzy graphics package that will, show our names beneath us somewhere on this video. Who knows? We might do cool stuff like that if we can afford it. But give me just a little background on your role here as VCIO. Just a really short 30-second snippet of what you do for InfoSystems.
Yeah, so my role is I go into businesses and start off typically meeting with executives there, CEO, CFO, help them figure out how IT can best work in their business. I then work in conjunction either with their IT people that they already have there, perhaps provide some strategic direction for them, or I work here at InfoSystems. We have a bench full of subject matter experts in a variety of topics. I'll work with them and put together a package that will best beat their business goals.
Cool. Very nice. So for today's video cast, we're going to be talking cloud. The official title, How to Create an Effective Cloud Strategy, Part 1, Evaluating Cloud Strategies. And so in preparation for today's video cast, you really felt like it was important to start by talking about what is the cloud. What's the basic definition of the cloud?
And the reason for that is because there's a lot of definitions out there. It's almost, you've heard the old saying, if you ask 10 people that, you'll get 20 different answers, and I think the cloud certainly fits into that category. For our purposes today, I'm going to define cloud as a couple of key factors in there. One is cloud computing in most cases means it's not here. It's not hosted locally on premise for a business. It's somewhere else. Now that could be, the somewhere else could be a private cloud that is the business still owns, but it's just in a facility somewhere else. Or it could be public cloud, the services that are offered by vendors that are simply allowing that business to use their resources for a monthly payment. So that's the second criteria. I think a lot of times is cloud computing tends to be operational costs rather than capital costs. It's something that you pay for over time.
You're saying that there is actually a physical place where all of this stuff lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I thought the cloud was just some kind of mysterious bubble floating around that we all just log into to get our data and pictures that we took.
Yeah, at the end of the day, those pictures that you took, if they're in your iCloud, which hopefully you have two-factor authentication turned on for,
I promise.
Yeah, they live on a server somewhere in the data center. You may not even be able to figure out which data center, and it's probably, if the company's doing things right, it resides in multiples for, to
we
give
hope.
you hope, to give you redundancy and protection.
Okay, so everyone knows that you can store data in the cloud. Everybody knows that you can subscribe to, cloud software. A really popular example might be Office 365, the traditional Office apps, but in the cloud. That's referred to as SaaS,
Right.
Software as a Service, SaaS. But there's other types of cloud. Can you explain?
Sure. So software as a service is by far the most popular type of cloud offering. You gave a good example there. Office 365, QuickBooks has a software as a service. For the home consumer, if you do your taxes online each year, TurboTax or something like that in the cloud, that's a software as a service offering. Beyond that though, there's a couple other ones. They also have that IaaS as a service. So the next step down, if you view it as a pyramid, which you often see, software as a service is up at the top. It's the most defined. In order, it's providing a very specific function to you. Next down the level would be platform as a service, or PaaS. Platform as a service.
What's the appropriate way to pronounce that one?
I just say PaaS, or I say platform as a service, or PaaS.
Okay, so if I say PaaS, I'm not going to look like I don't know what I'm talking about.
No.
Okay.
Not for that reason, anyway. Platform as a service is a collection of both hardware, software, and development tools that would allow a business to develop, run, operate either their own custom-made apps or some industry apps that they've customized to their liking without having to bear the expense or house all that equipment in-house. And then down at the bottom of the pyramid, which really supports all of this, is IaaS, infrastructure as a service.
And would I call that IaaS?
Sure.
Okay, I'll call it IaaS.
Yeah. Infrastructure as a service is remove all the layers of complexity out of it, and it's just simply hardware that a business can use however they choose. So it could be a collection of processing, compute, storage, network. So those are the big three components of a infrastructure service. So then you can build, think of that as a giant sandbox that you can really do anything with. Very, very flexible. So as you go up the pyramid, each offering gets a little less flexible and more defined for the end user.
That makes sense. So the infrastructure as a service piece would literally be like if I was purchasing hardware to put in my own facility.
Right.
I would have the same capabilities to do things on that hardware I can now do in the cloud with infrastructure as a service.
Yeah, and typically it is incredibly granular in how it's sold. So those may be virtualized hardware, but you can literally buy it, buy the processor, buy the virtual processor, or buy the gigabyte of storage, or and you can even do it in time increments. So you could buy infrastructure as a service and say, I want it for X number of hours per week. I want this number of virtual processors, this amount of storage that's available to me, and the rest of the time, unless I'm paying for it, I can't touch it.
And I would assume that's part of the attractive reason people would want to use it is because of that level. You know, if you buy hardware to put on premise, you're paying the full cost 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to run that equipment. You don't power it up and down just when you need it.
Right.
But with the cloud, you literally can just pay for what you use when you want to use it.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility. We had a customer that used a infrastructure as a service, and their need was on a monthly basis, just once a month for a couple of days. They had the need to upload just vast quantities of video that they had shot out to large numbers of TV stations throughout the country. It didn't make sense for them to do that in-house, so they would simply upload it to this, and then it would be funneled out from there. But they only did that once a month, so they literally just purchased it for a few hours a month to be able to upload that.
Nice. So I'm going to spring a surprise on you.
Okay.
And as we go forward in our video cast series, this is something you can come to expect. I'll kind of do things to make things a little less predictable, and hopefully have some fun in the process. So what I want to do, maybe in each of our video casts, I'll bring up a buzzword, an industry buzzword, and we'll call this our 30-second buzzword buster. So I'm going to bring up a buzzword, and then I'll give you 30 seconds, or as close, you can explain it in as close to 30 seconds as you can.
Oh boy.
Without using any industry jargon or as
Oh.
little industry jargon as possible. I think this will be fun. So let me get
It'll be fun for you.
I'm going to time this and figure out exactly how long it takes you to explain the buzzword. Are you ready?
We'll see.
All right, today's buzzword is hybrid cloud.
Okay. So hybrid cloud, and it's actually a buzzword that I like. Hybrid cloud is really, I would describe it as dipping your toes into the water in a rational manner rather than listening to the marketing forces. And if you turn on the TV at all, you'll see them blasting, go cloud, go cloud, go cloud. Hybrid is doing things in a logical manner where you move the things that make sense to the cloud as they make sense. Things that should stay on premise, they stay on premise until that workload is suitable to move to the cloud, or the cloud is matured enough to handle that workload.
Well, you clocked in at 39 seconds.
Ooh.
And you are surprisingly good at that. I mean, you actually did not use really industry jargon at all, so I'm impressed.
Well, it cost me 9 extra seconds, but
So now I'm going to have to come up with better ways to stump you in the future. Okay, so you just mentioned something in that definition that I was going to bring up to discuss anyway. In the past, I worked for a company that was a Microsoft Dynamics partner. Microsoft Dynamics has their own software as a service platform, CRM systems, ERP systems, which is kind of like accounting and business operations. And as a Dynamics partner, I went to all of the Microsoft conferences. I listened in to all of the, webcasts where they were talking about the new features and the new tactics for what they're going to take to market. And I also listened in to, our competitors' webcasts and
Right.
sales pitches too. And what always blew me away was how amazingly simple and fail-proof everything sounded. I mean, they were really good at those sales presentations. So what I wanted to sort of kick your way is, so as business leaders in our community are evaluating cloud software or cloud solutions of any kind, and they're getting these sales pitches to make everything sound so incredibly easy and infallible. What should they really be considering, and what are some potential, gotchas that they may encounter if they are purchasing those solutions?
Sure. Well, I've often said, I've been in this industry for quite a few years now. I've often said that some of our large corporations out there, such as Microsoft and others out there, have just amazing marketing firms. They can have the slickest message, and quite frankly, I think the industry as a whole, we have better marketers sometimes than we do have engineers. So, because anytime that you have a trend in an industry, you really, the reality never quite meets the hype, at least initially. It takes a while to get over that curve and get into the best use case scenario. So, when we talk about potential pitfalls, of your cloud strategy, I divide them into several categories. From a financial standpoint, one of the things that you'll hear marketed over and over and over is, no need for large capital expenditures.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Operating expense versus capital expense,
Right.
and the cloud position is always that operational expense is better,
Right.
because it's consistent, predictable. You're not putting out a big, huge chunk of money up front. But so, what are you saying, that that's not the case?
That certainly can be true, and I think it is true for some cases. But I have sat in the offices of several CFOs that we've gone to and talked about possible cloud migrations for some things, and I've heard the message from some of them saying, the last thing I want to do is cut another monthly check, and add to my operational. I would rather have something that I own and that I can save for and write off, So it's a business decision, and that's going to depend on you, Mr. Business Owner, what's important to you. Just because the marketing arm says that operational is always better doesn't mean it is for you.
Yeah.
Another thing about financial, we've been in this cloud era for a few years now, and in this free market society that we live in, one of the things I've noticed is as more workloads have moved to the cloud, it has had an impact on hardware costs. Guess what they've done?
So the hardware companies aren't just gonna, wither up and die. They're actually going to respond to the market.
Yeah. So they're trying to stay in business too. So a lot of them have dropped prices considerably, and so it's blurred the lines for sure. Now I'm not here to tell you that you should go on premise. I'm not here to tell you should go cloud. I'm here to tell you need to figure out what's best for you as a business and make a rational decision based on what's important to you and what your goals are.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it said so many times, storage is cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny even when you go to, a big box electronics store and you look at the hard drives that are sitting there, portable hard drives, you can buy terabytes of data of data storage space for pretty cheap. I mean, it's a consumer technology now.
Right.
Any family can afford that. So yeah, I mean, it is amazing the way the market has changed over time. And I guess, maybe that is just a response to the cloud and, all of the other forces that are at work in technology.
I think a second category would be, know who you're doing business with. That applies in a lot of areas. One, you need to look at the product offering. First of all, how mature is it? We've got some great cloud offerings out there. We referred to Microsoft Office 365 earlier. That's a pretty mature product. It's been around for a while. It's been tested. Microsoft continues to tweak and improve it. And I'm not too worried about Microsoft going belly up on me and leaving my email stranded, right? They got lots of cash in the bank.
Yeah.
But that's not true for all cloud offerings out there. So, make sure you know who you're signing up to do business with from a financial stability standpoint, from a geography standpoint. If one of your desires out of cloud technology is to give you business resiliency to protect you against things like flood, hurricanes, tornadoes, fire, whatever it may be, you need to know where that cloud offering is hosted geographically. I've ran into business we've talked with that had made the move to a cloud with that in mind, only to find out that it was being hosted with them within just a few miles of from their office. And they were shocked to learn that because they hadn't asked that up front.
So if a tornado came through and destroyed everything within that path, your backups are gone too. Yeah.
So they literally had all their eggs in one basket without realizing it.
Yeah.
It was a big basket, but they hadn't counted the cost on that.
And there are some, there are industries out there where the location of your data is important.
Sure.
Right? I mean, what's your insight on that? Because I just know from hearing it over the years, working in the IT industry and marketing type positions, that there are regulations in place where some companies have to know physically where all of their data resides.
Yeah. And again, it depends on the individual business, but they may have regulations that control where their data is, who can have sight or ability to access it. So it's important to not only know where it is, but also know what you've signed up for on your contract. You've got to read that fine print. We as IT consumers, we don't do that. And I'm just as bad.
Terms and conditions, I accept.
Yeah. And some of them have gotten clever. They make you scroll before the I accept will even light up, but we don't. We don't read it. If you as a business are signing up for a cloud agreement, you got to read that fine print. You got to have your attorney read that fine print because you've got to know not only what your acceptable use is. There are cloud providers out there that have in their contract they have the right to scan your data so they can pick up on keywords in that data and market to you based on what they see in there. That would be a huge violation for some industries.
That brings up a point that I wanted to talk about too. Are there trade-offs that you make when you go to the cloud? I mean, especially, I would assume when we're talking cost consideration, if you get something for free or for really inexpensive compared to, you know, what it would actually cost you to run that solution, there's got to be some trade-offs.
Yeah, and the one I want to mention is the big trade-off. And I think the one that you'll hear it expressed, you know, if you can't figure out how they're monetizing, how they're making money off of it, then you're the product.
Right.
And you know, a good consumer-based example is Facebook, right? Facebook is something that's become very ubiquitous, and Facebook doesn't charge, despite the rumor that you hear come up from time to time. They've categorically said they'll never charge, but they're making money.
Yeah.
And they're making money because they're collecting data on us and selling it to marketing companies and to sales companies. And you as a business owner have got to realize that could be happening to you if you've not read that fine print.
Yeah. So I brought up, you know, the software as a service industry and some of the predatory sales tactics. And we've talked about, you know, some trade-offs, some of the negative things that you might encounter trying to get to the cloud or use the cloud. But when we were talking about doing these video casts on the cloud, you made it really clear that you wanted to share the message that everyone who hears this conversation would not get the impression that InfoSystems is anti-cloud.
No, absolutely not.
So, I mean, there's obviously a ton of benefits, and we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about, you know, benefits and pros and cons to the cloud. We've just been talking about some of these topics, but what are some of those benefits that people could expect from cloud solutions, and even maybe benefits for solution providers like InfoSystems? What does it allow us to do that we couldn't do in the past?
Sure, and the benefits are widely, I mean, there's a lot of them and there's a lot of variation to them. Some we've mentioned before, you know, from a financial standpoint, operational costs might be better for you, right? That might be something that you like. Scalability is a huge factor. The ability for you as a business to quickly scale up, you know, in an on-premise location, there are a lot of things that may stop you from scaling quickly, not the least of which is just space, right? You may not have the space in your building to be able to house all the systems that you need.
Yeah.
The fact that all those systems are already pre-made and ready, especially in a software as a service environment, something like that, they're already pre-made, they're tested, they're easy to spin up quickly. So that's another one, is being able to not only scale, but turn up new loads in a very quick manner. In the old days when it was time to deploy a server for a new workload, well, that could be a process that could literally take weeks.
Yeah.
By the time you decide what you want, spec it out, order the hardware, have it come in, have someone design it. Nowadays, with infrastructure as a service, you could literally have that provisioned in under an hour or so. You could have that server up and running. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly incredible what the industry has done. Some other nice things, some advantages is, if done properly, cloud computing can bring greater security and resiliency and redundancy than you could ever afford to do on your own. Proper cloud providers are hosted in, you know, top-notch data centers that have, you know, good fire suppression. They have redundant power sources. They have redundant internet sources. They have, you know, top-notch security with, you know, some case fingerprint, iris scanners. It can be tough. I can remember going to do some work for a customer at one of his sites, and the security there was incredible. In
Yeah.
fact, it got to the point where I found out that the customer didn't know this, that they wouldn't let me in because they hadn't done a background check on me yet.
Wow.
So that trip had to be rescheduled because their security was that tight. They couldn't have just anyone walking around in the racks there.
When you talk about, that redundancy and resiliency, and I mean, even something as simple from my perspective as a marketing director, something as simple as hosting a website. Whereas years ago, you had to pay to host the website, and there was no backup to that unless you paid and figured out your own solution. Now with something as simple as website hosting, I'm just paying a monthly fee, and it's automatically backed up on a daily basis. If I need it to be restored, if something happens and I need to restore it, it's instant.
Right.
That you've got your website back to a previous version, or it's amazing that all of that is just kind of packaged and built in now, whereas before it was so complex and expensive. So yeah, that's great. So all of these topics, I would imagine are probably really top of mind right now because there are so many cloud solutions out there, and it's only growing.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to scale back anytime soon. So businesses every day are facing decisions on what to do. So that sort of brings me up to a promo here for our next episode. As we talked through kind of what is cloud and some of these foundational elements, in our next podcast or video cast, we're going to talk about creating a migration roadmap. So for companies who may identify cloud solutions that they would like to get to, or maybe they've just made a decision that I want to move forward with a cloud strategy and explore things. You're going to talk about some things that will help them create that cloud migration roadmap. So episode 1 in the books. Any final comments, thoughts on this experience?
No, I would just say, you know what, I'm gonna save the rest for episode 2.
Sweet.
So you'll have to tune in.
Oh, I like the cliffhanger at the end of the episode. That's the way to do it. Cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll just sign off. Maybe I'll have to come up with some kind of official sign-off phrase or something for when we're wrapping up an episode. I don't know, but it was fun, that's for sure, and I'm looking forward to continuing this process together, and all of the information that we'll be sharing with local business leaders. Hopefully it'll be a valuable resource. So keep tuning in.